Let's start with the inputs. First in the list is project management plan. From the deck of project management plan, scope management plan is the first key input that is used during create WBS process. Scope management plan. The scope management plan documents how the WBS will be created from the project scope statement. The next is project documents. I think by now you already know that not all the 33 project documents will be used during every process. Rather, only the relevant ones are used. So, going forward, let's straight away jump into the relevant project documents rather than discussing on introduction unless we encounter it for the first time. Project scope statement. From the scope, you break down the high level work into smaller and more manageable pieces. That is called work breakdown structure. Typically, during the WBS creation, the sequence of activities may not be clear. So, people start listing down the activities. Just imagine you are going to do a housewarming ceremony. You don't do housewarming ceremony often. So, most likely you do not know all the activities involved in housewarming ceremony. Then how do we do it? Since there is no experience, we start listing down the activities as it comes to the mind. You may discuss with your friends, family, and you list down all the activities. Later, the activities are put in sequence and group similar activities. That's what exactly we do in a project. Bringing activities in sequence is called by its name activity sequencing. As discussed earlier, every task will have start date, end date, duration, and resource involved. These are basic information. On top of it, there will be information about the predecessor activity, successor activity, and risk involved, etc. You basically attach every possible information into an activity. This will help the project team to get to know more about the task. That becomes handy during project execution. This complete information, such as start date, end date, duration, resource, risk involved, predecessor, successor, etc., is called as Work Breakdown Structure Dictionary, shortly WBS Dictionary. Scope baseline. The approved detailed project scope statement and its associated WBS and WBS dictionary are the scope baseline for the project. I hope you already got the idea. A question to you. Why the scope baseline should have WBS and WBS dictionary? Why not just the scope alone? Imagine the scope of the project is clearly defined. To deliver the scope, certain activities to be carried out. Now a change request raised. It should go through change request process to get it approved. This approved change request has to be implemented in the project as part of deliverable. To make this deliverable, you may have to carry out new set of activities. Since there is a change in scope, obviously the activities need to be carried out also will go for a change. So as the WBS dictionary. This is the reason scope baseline includes WBS and WBS dictionary along with the scope. Few things to remember. On a plan-driven project, the development of the project scope statement can take a lot of time. You may have to involve the experts, both internal and external to the organization. For the change-driven project, the scope statement will be less detailed because the final delivery is not crystal clear. But still, you need to have enough detail to define what is in and what is out of scope. On either case, a detailed project scope statement typically includes description of the product that will be delivered by the project, the product, service, or result that will be delivered as an outcome of the project will be detailed as deliverable. The stakeholders' acceptance criteria to call the project is complete. And very importantly, what is excluded from the project. Let's understand the difference between scope statement and project charter. Among the PMP aspirants, it's a common confusion. It may look both the scope statement and the project charter contain same information, but the difference comes in the level of detail. In project charter, it will be at a very high level, but in project scope statement, it's as detailed as possible. Don't forget, these components are progressively elaborated throughout the project. It would be great if all the information about the scope available during the beginning of the project itself. Of course, when every single information is available, the end product will be clear to the stakeholders, so less change request. The next is requirements documentation. Of course, requirements are the base for creating the work breakdown structure. Detailed requirement describes how individual requirements meet the business need. Let's move to the next input, enterprise environmental factors. WBS standard. Here, we are talking about industry-specific WBS standards that are relevant to the nature of current project. These industry-specific standards may serve as external reference source for creating the WBS. The last input in the list is organizational process asserts. Let's look at the OPAs that are relevant to the context. Lessons learned repositories from similar projects, policies, procedures, and templates related to WBS, project files from previous projects. All right, now it's time to discuss about the tools and techniques. The first is expert judgment. For this process, experienced expert from similar projects will be quite helpful. The next is decomposition. Let's look at the overview first. Decomposition is a technique used to divide the entire project scope and project deliverables into smaller and more manageable parts. Aggregated activities represent the effort needed to complete a work package. Let's understand decomposition in current context. In work breakdown structure, the work package is the lowest level of work defined. This work package is used to estimate cost. Depending upon the control level needed in the project, the decomposition level is decided. Different project needs different level of detailing so that they can be managed efficiently. Of course, the level of detail needed in a work package will vary depending on the project size and complexity. Typically, decomposition of work package involves activities such as identify the deliverables, structure the WBS, decompose the WBS into lower level detailed components, develop and assign identification number for those components, ensure that the decomposition will meet the expected deliverables. The work breakdown structure may be created through various approaches such as top-down, bottom-up, or organization-specific WBS template. A bottom-up approach can be used to group subcomponents. In fact, the WBS can be represented by phase or by deliverables. It depends on the project. WBS components should represent verifiable product, service, or results. Depending on the deliverables, the level of decomposition can be at surface level or at detailed level. Of course, when the project is decomposed to greater level of detail, it aids to plan, manage, and control the work efficiently. However, a word of caution. Excessive decomposition can lead to non-productive management effort, such as inefficient use of resources, decreased efficiency in performing the work, and difficulty in aggregating data over different level of WBS. Of course, you may not be able to decompose every single component in a project, especially when those components have less clarity. Usually, the project management team waits until the deliverables of subcomponents have enough details. As the project progresses, there will be clarity of those components. Then the WBS developed for those. This technique is referred as rolling wave planning. The WBS represents all product and project work, including the project management work. The lowest level should roll up to the highest level so that nothing is left out and no extra work is performed. So this is called as 100% rule. All right, the outputs now. Scope baseline. First, the overview. Scope baseline is a component of the project management plan. Baselines are final and approved versions of the project management plan. There are primarily three baselines in a project: scope baseline, schedule baseline, and cost baseline. The project manager and the project team's success will be measured based on the baseline. The scope baseline is the approved version of scope statement. plus WBS plus its associated WBS dictionary. If the scope is going to get affected by any of the project component or by the project document, then those also need to be updated. This includes the requirements documentation and the assumption log. Once baseline, the changes can be carried out only through formal change control procedures. Keep in mind, approved changes may bring in new activities which may affect WBS, WBS dictionary, and the project scope statement. Accordingly, those needs to be updated. This updated documentation becomes the new scope baseline for the project. Now, in context, scope baseline is the basis for work breakdown structure. As discussed in overview, the scope baseline includes project scope statement. The project scope statement includes the description of the project scope, major deliverables, assumptions, and constraints. Work breakdown structure. The WBS is a hierarchical decomposition of the total scope of work to be carried out by the project team to accomplish the project objectives and create the required deliverables. Each descending level of WBS represents an increasingly detailed definition of the project work package. The lowest level of WBS is a work package with a unique identifier. These identifiers provide a structure for hierarchical summation of cost, schedule, and resource information and form a code of accounts. Each work package is part of control account. Now, let's talk about control account. A control account is a management control point where the scope, budget, and schedule are integrated and compared to the earned value for performance measurement. We will have a detailed discussion about earned value in project cost management, so make a note of it. Planning package. A planning package is a work breakdown structure component below the control account and above the work package with known work content but without detailed schedule activities. A control account may include one or more planning packages. This is called planning account. And WBS dictionary. The WBS dictionary is a document that provides detailed deliverable, activity, and scheduling information about each component in the WBS. The WBS dictionary is a document that supports the WBS. Let's quickly look at the possible content of WBS dictionary. Code of account identifier, description of work, assumptions and constraints, responsible organization, schedule milestones, associated schedule activities, resources required, cost estimates, quality requirements, acceptance criteria, technical reference, and agreement information. The final output is project document updates. There are two documents in it. First, assumption log. Creation of WBS may uncover new assumption and also existing assumptions may need to be updated. Based on certain assumptions, you would have created the WBS. But after creating the WBS, you realized that few more new assumptions to be added. Some of the existing assumptions are no longer valid, so they need to be removed. Some of the existing assumptions may need to be updated to suit to the new conditions. The second is requirements documentation. Requirements documentation may be updated to include approved changes resulting from the create WBS process. That wraps up the ITTO. Let's move to the next one.